It seems these days there's a sports version of every form of transport. Sports cars, sports bikes, sports boats, sports planes, even sports snowmobiles. Just souped up versions designed for improved agility and significantly higher speeds. Given the presence railways had all over the world by the turn of the 20th century, that raises the question, is there or has there ever been such a thing as a sports train? Technically speaking, no. But in 1933, Bugatti gave it a damn good go. In 1930, Ettore Bugatti was in an awkward predicament. Bugatti had made his name designing and manufacturing both impressive racing cars and luxurious personal vehicles in France, and with his company being quite small, he personally oversaw the construction of every car they built. In 1927, he designed and built the Bugatti Royale, a 6-metre-long behemoth of a luxury car designed to compete with the British Rolls-Royce company. As glorious as these cars were, only 3 had been sold before the Wall Street crash in 1929. Bugatti had produced a batch of powerful straight-8 engines in anticipation of car sales, but after only using 7 of them when the Wall Street crash hit, he was left with 25 massive engine blocks and no potential buyers. With car sales all over France going down, Bugatti turned his attention to what other car manufacturers were doing, and found that rather than building road vehicles, they were building rail vehicles. After the First World War, the rise in road traffic had greatly impacted France's railway network, and combined with the Great Depression, many railways were looking for cost-effective ways to keep services running. Steam engines were expensive to maintain, took a long time to get ready, and were overall uneconomical to run on low-traffic passenger lines. To solve this problem, the railways turned to car manufacturers who designed and built railcars to be used instead. These were not only cheaper to build and maintain, but faster than most passenger locomotives and required fewer men to operate. A fleet of railcars produced by Fiat in Italy had proven to be both an economical and stylish way of keeping branch lines running, and so France's railways decided to adopt the idea. Companies like Renault had already started building their own railcars, and so Bugatti felt that with 25 straight-8 engine blocks just kicking around, he might as well give this railcar thing a go. Being a man whose passion was racing cars and luxury transport, however, Bugatti wasn't content with just putting buses on rails like most other car companies were. He envisioned fast, comfortable, streamlined rail cars designed to run important express services between major cities. Taking 9 months to perfect the design, Bugatti built their first rail car in 1933. Measuring in at 19.3 meters long, it was styled after Bugatti's Type 32 racing car, mounted on 2 4-axle bogies, fitted with drum brakes and 4 of the straight-8 engines intended for the Royales, giving the rail car a total of 800 horsepower. The driver's cab was located in the middle of the rail car, with the driver being positioned in a sort of crow's nest, giving them a 360-degree view over the top of the vehicle, allowing them to drive in both directions from the same position. Inside, it was fitted with 48 luxuriously upholstered seats and plenty of windows, giving passengers a comfortable and scenic view as they travelled. The floors were made of oak wood and carpeted, with a layer of rubber foam under the floor to dampen noise, and the bodywork was made up of 5 main segments, each fitted with rubber strips between them to allow some play between the panels, helping reduce vibrations coming from the chassis. On top of that, the suspension on the bogies was much more akin to the kind used in cars, and each wheel had a little bit of horizontal play and a rubber ring fitted between the wheel's hub and the metal tyre to ensure both a smoother and a quieter ride for passengers. It was presented to the State Railway Administration in the spring of 1933 and tested on the railway. During one run between Connery and Le Mans, Bugatti's railcar managed to reach 172 km an hour, proving to be just as fast as it was luxurious. In the summer, it ran between Paris and Deauville, and at one point carried President Albert Lebrun. The positive reception of the rail car combined with the endorsement from France's president led to Bugatti building more, with the company referring to the class as the Presidentials. A second Presidential was completed in February 1934, along with another two later that year. These rail cars ran between Paris and Deauville, and in October that year, one of them hit 196 km an hour while travelling between Le Mans and Connery, setting the world record at the time. A further 5 Presidentials were built for the State Railway Administration between 1935 and 1936, bringing the total to 9. With a world record-holding machine on his hands, it wasn't long before Bugatti was flooded with orders for more high-performance rail cars. Rather than building more Presidentials, Bugatti developed a series of different variations of the design more tailored to the different needs of the railways. His next design was known as the Light, being similar in shape and size to the Presidentials, but lighter and with only 2 straight 8 engines instead of the Presidential's 4, making them much less expensive and fuel-hungry. Following that was the elongated and over-elongated variants, as well as the double and triple unit engines which could seat 74 and 144 people respectively. On multiple unit designs, each car segment was connected with a flexible rubber gangway between them, allowing passengers to safely travel between them while moving. Extra comforts added for passengers included a baggage room and toilet near the centre of the rail car, and on multiple unit designs, each car had their own toilet and baggage area as well as a small dining area, with the triple units even having their own kitchen to serve passengers on longer trips. In some rail cars, the seats were even designed so that passengers could turn them around if they wanted to face the direction of travel or each other. And though Bugatti's rail cars got bigger, their performance didn't falter. The railways found that the Bugattis could easily shave an hour off the time of longer journeys, with them able to get from Paris to Lyon in less than 5 hours, and covering the distance between Paris and Vichy in less than 4, something most steam engines of the time couldn't hope to match. In fact, it was quite common for them to average speeds of over 130 km an hour, frequently hitting 145 while in service. Bugatti produced a total of 86 rail cars between 1933 and 1939, with them proving to be so popular that Bugatti had to completely change how his company operated. Originally, his cars were made artisanally, crafted one at a time under his watch. Now, with so many parts needing to be made and put together, the company had to industrialize its building process and hire on more people to help fill orders and maintain the fleet. Thanks to the railcars, Bugatti went from a struggling car company to a nationwide name. It's even said that their streamlined design served as inspiration for the appearance of the LMS's Coronation Scott. But as fabulous as Bugatti's rail cars were, they still had their shortcomings. Starting out, driving them was nowhere near as nice as riding in them. The driver was usually positioned directly above the engines and would have to deal with the constant noise and fumes they produced. Further adding to the discomfort was their seating arrangement, as the Bugatti's cabs were fitted with saddles instead of seats, something that one can only imagine would start to hurt after a while. On the bigger double or triple Bugattis, the raised cab proved to give the drivers an insufficient view when shunting, and so an additional driver would have to sit at the front of the railcar with their own set of controls with which they communicated with the main driver. The sound and smell of the engines also seemed to cause some discomfort for the passengers too. The strange smell likely came from the equally strange fuel the Bugattis ran on, a mixture of petrol, alcohol and benzol. This fuel proved to be quite violent and frequently caused misfires, something that would often result in sudden jets of fire shooting out of their exhausts that were mounted at platform level. You can imagine the kind of fright passengers must have had if they happened to be next to a Bugatti when it misfired. The misfires were so bad that supposedly one engine splutter accidentally set fire to a newspaper stand. Running hot also seemed to be a common issue on some of the bigger Bugattis. The radiators were often mounted on the side near the middle, but their positioning wasn't the most effective for airflow, often resulting in them getting quite hot. To amend this, early versions of the stretched Bugatti featured additional radiators fitted to the roof, while later models had forced ventilation radiators. It's also reported that despite their phenomenal power, the engine blocks had to be carefully operated and maintained, requiring they be serviced every 90,000 kilometers. On top of the engines, the brakes would need frequent servicing too. The drum brakes Bugatti installed were brilliant, capable of bringing a railcar travelling at 150 km an hour to a complete stop in just 600 meters. However, they wore out quickly and required each wheel be removed in order to be replaced. While building and running them was relatively cheap, the most damning thing for the Bugattis were how expensive they were to maintain, especially when you consider how few people they could carry. Just like sports cars, the Bugattis could go incredibly fast, but could only carry a limited amount of passengers. Bigger express locomotives, while slower by comparison, were still able to make up for it on busier days by simply pulling more coaches. The railcars didn't have that same expandability, and as a result, despite the Bugattis being much faster than most express locomotives, they still weren't able to move as many passengers at one time. At first, the amount of time and manpower they saved was enough to justify running these services, but slowly as the 1930s went on, the fuel became steadily more expensive, and by the start of World War II, it was decided it would be best to put them to one side until the fighting was over. Attempts had been made prior to the war to market the Bugattis abroad, but it seems there was little interest in them outside of France. Bugatti built their last two railcars in 1945, bringing the total to 88. With Ettore Bugatti's death in 1947, no heir to the company, and a significant amount of debt from the war, Bugatti went out of business, and slowly the Bugatti railcars were withdrawn. Many of the big, thirsty, four-engine designs had already been taken out of service and modified into trailers for other railcars, and slowly the rest followed suit. The last Bugatti was withdrawn from mainline service in 1958 and scrapped along with most of the others. One remained abandoned in a siding until the 1980s, but was too rotten to move and was scrapped as a result. Luckily, however, one managed to survive. A presidential railcar had been modified years prior and was being used as a signal verification vehicle by France's National Railway until 1975. With it still being in relatively sound condition, it was restored back into its original form and put on display at Cité du Train in Mulhouse, where it has remained ever since. Looking back, Ettore Bugatti's railcars were certainly outstanding machines. Not only were they visually striking, but also fast and exceedingly comfortable for passengers too. He truly set the bar with his designs, influencing countless other future railcar designers in terms of both style and performance. Did he truly make the world's first and possibly only true sports trains? That's up for you to decide. But regardless of your conclusions, you have to admit, he damn well came close. Subscribe for more.